Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with Victory Strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
And welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly. I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. And you know, this is for us victory chicks and you men who care about us. We meet on Fridays to chat about things to make our lives sparkle, to get empowered. To get empowered and make our lives sparkle. I missed a whole piece of that. But listen, thanks for coming to Happy Hour. You make my week. Listen, our friend and elder care attorney, Cathy Sikorski, is back with us today. Cathy always has good info for us about taking care of our parents or ourselves as we're getting older. And she just got back from something she did in Chicago, and I'm just dying for her to tell you about it. So Cathy's going to be here shortly. And speaking of elder care, how about that fire at the Barclay last night? I saw some of the pictures on today's news, and I can barely believe so much of it burned down so quickly. You know, if you know anyone living there, I hope they're okay. This was terrible for those residents, and I'm going to ask Cathy about how we can protect our loved ones and ourselves, if there's anything we can do. So that's the local news, but on the national scene, the hits just keep on coming with the sexual misconduct stuff. First it was the media guys, then the Hollywood hotshots, now it's the politicians. Of course, most of the victims are women, though there have been a couple of men coming forward. But what surprises me is that some people seem really shocked that there are so many men being accused. They can't believe that it's as rampant as it obviously is. You know, Victory Chicks and you guys, I really don't get that part. I mean, movies and TV, going back 50 years, make reference to the casting couch. You know, Hollywood producers promising a starlet a movie or a TV deal in exchange for sexual favors. A few years ago, there was even a movie called The Casting Couch, and it was about 6 loser guys who created a whole story about how they were producing a movie just so they could have a venue in which to meet girls and get laid. And for years and years, when women were getting, you know, at the very beginning when women were getting executive positions in the workplace, a lot of them were accused of sleeping their way to the top. Mostly that didn't happen, but sometimes it was true because sometimes it was the only way they knew because of that power of the men who were in charge. It was just like in Hollywood. Politically, we know what happens. The stories about President Kennedy and his brother Ted are almost legendary. Same with Bill Clinton's escapades. Now, he got a pass on the sex part. He was impeached for lying under oath, but not the sex. And, of course, there's the Donald Trump Access Hollywood tape and the other sex accusations against him. So those are just 4 of our most notable politicians. So why anyone is surprised by all the sexual allegations is beyond my comprehension. In fact, my guess is that today there are a lot of our current politicians right today, who are already lawyering up and hiring PR firms for stuff they've done, just in case their name starts to come up with people that they've abused. But here's the thing about that. This is something I didn't know until this week. Our illustrious congressman created a system, something called the Congressional Accountability Act, that protects congressmen from getting in trouble if the women they abuse come forward. If those victims of congressional sexual misconduct say anything, they, the victims, the women, have to go through months of counseling and mediation. Then, and here's the big kicker, those women get hush money, whatever they want to call it, from a taxpayer-funded slush fund. Now, according to CNN, I'm quoting, once a settlement is reached, the money is not paid out of the individual member's office, but rather comes out of a fund set up to handle this within the U.S. Treasury, meaning taxpayers are footing the bill. And then, apparently, there's this creep list, a list of congressional men who are sexual predators. And it's put together, designed to warn women who work in Congress. Is that not unbelievable to you? So the sex stuff in Congress is apparently so common and widespread that the cagey men actually set up a system to accommodate and then pay for their bad behavior. Your tax dollars at work, huh? Meanwhile, they get the good health care, they get the in-house gym, they get the in-house barber, the full court staff, all at our expense. Now, talk about a swamp. You know, that's as bad as the Catholic Church protecting pedophile priests by paying off the victims with the money that was donated by struggling families and little old ladies. Well, yesterday I sent out a newsletter with the subject line, #MeToo. In it, I talked about the Lankenau Hospital gynecologist who I saw briefly. Nothing happened with me with him, who had to give up his, that was me, not most of the women who went to, or a large number of women. He had to give up his practice in exchange for not being prosecuted for the 37 counts of sexual misconduct that included 9 rapes. This was your trusted hospital, well-known gynecologist. And in my newsletter, I talked about my personal experience with a dentist who eventually lost his license after being found guilty of multiple counts of sexual abuse of patients. I didn't speak up in that case, but other women did. And then here's the thing, a couple years after all that finished, the staff knew the guy was looking for, the dentist, was looking at porn all during the workday. No one reported him until finally 3 women came forward. And those are 3 women that went on record, not other women like myself who never said anything. Late last night I got an email from someone who read my story. She noticed She noted that the scary part of it was, and I'm quoting her, of these people coming out to tell their stories, people all around these high-powered people knew what was going on and no one else stopped it. Well, that might change now because things are starting to cook, aren't they? Now, frankly, I don't know if you're one of the people who's shocked, but I think we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Okay, enough of that. I have a couple follow-up things to share with you. I did 2 big things this week. I finally bought a car, a Mazda 3. In fact, right after last week's Friday happy hour, the salesperson picked me up here in town because, of course, my car had been sitting at Roberts Chevrolet, now Reedman Toll, in Downingtown since Halloween. Roberts was great. They kept my car for a week while I looked at other cars, including a Chevy Cruze. And, you know, I drive stick, so there are a limited number of cars available to me. And it was I ended up picking between the Mazda and the Cruze, or those were my final choices. And actually, the Cruze was the front runner, mostly because it's what I had, and also because I liked going to Roberts Chevrolet, because they always gave me good service when I took my car there. But the Cruze didn't have all the safety features I wanted. So last Thursday night, I finally made my decision. And I hope now I bought the car from Piazza Mazda here in Westchester, and I hope I get the same good service. And so far, it's a good experience. Phil Saracini was the salesperson, and he was good. I went in with a list of what I wanted, and after I read him my list, and yes, I wrote it down and read it off to him, he said, "I have the car for you." Well, I did kind of a silent eye roll, and I thought, yeah, sure you do. They'll say. But you know what? Phil brought me a car that actually had everything on my list. Well, everything except the CD player. You know, that wasn't on my list because I presumed all cars have CD players. But guess what? Just in case you're looking for a new car, CD players in cars are going the way of 8-tracks and cassettes. I didn't know that until I bought the car. The only thing I didn't like was the color. It's called titanium gray. That's gray with sort of a bronze tint or something. And I know gray is very popular, but for me, gray just doesn't have quite enough jazz. However, the whole rest of the car worked for me, so now I just hope the color grows on me, or I can put like some pinstripes on it or something to give it a little jazz. Anyway, I'll give Phil Saraceni a shout-out because he made the whole thing easy. And when I had my car towed there the next day, Phil wasn't there. He was at a wedding. But another guy was there, and I hadn't even actually met him. But he knew who I was, called me by my name. And, you know, we love being called by our names. So I'm hoping to get the same good service at Piazza as I got at Roberts. Okay, next thing. I finally did a sign-off of the 5-year marriage book. That means it should be in print in December and ready for pre-sale and publicity before the official launch in February. Now, I'll let you know when it's ready so you can get your hands on your very own copy. And even if you're married already, based on the testimonials from women who have read it, you'll want it for yourself and your kids and your grandkids. Well, that'll be in December. But you don't have to wait for Cathy Sikorski's book, Who Moved My Teeth. You can get that today. You know, we have such a good time when Cathy gets here, and today we'll be talking about elder care and Medicare, money, and mooning. Yes, you heard me, mooning. But somehow I don't think it's the kind of mooning that you and I are familiar with. But it's something Cathy says we need to know about. So go get some good happy hour something to drink, and when we come back, we'll be talking with Cathy Sikorski. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with our friend Cathy Sikorski. Welcome back, Cathy.
Thanks, Annmarie. It's always so fun to be with you.
I know. I love when you come to the Happy Hour.
Me too.
Cathy, you have been busy. Tell everybody where you were last weekend and what you were doing.
Oh, last weekend was so wonderful. I was in Chicago for the National Caregiving Conference, and I was fortunate to be the keynote speaker. So that was quite a thrill.
Mm-hmm.
Their keynote speaker does a 45-minute keynote. So
oh, my goodness.
It was pretty intense.
Yeah, that's it. 45 minutes for everybody who doesn't know. 45 minutes to speak takes hours and hours and hours to prep, doesn't it?
Months. I started back in August, just so you know. So, months.
So
very well. I met some amazing people, came away with some great things. I don't know if your listeners know, Annmarie, but November is National Caregivers Month.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Yeah, so you're probably seeing things. You are seeing things on TV, and you're seeing things in the paper if you're still getting a paper like I do. But it is National Caregivers Month. And, of course, it's also the same time that we do Medicare open enrollment. So that sort of goes hand in hand. But it was quite a wonderful educational experience, learned a lot of new things, and came away with a lot of understanding about what, today's caregiver is still going through.
Before we talk about Medicare, I wanted to ask you this. How's Who Moved My Teeth going?
Who Moved My Teeth is going great. Thank you so much for asking. It is really doing very well. I was actually prepping for you today, and I was looking at the video of my keynote, and I got a phone call, and, it was a Westchester phone number, Annmarie, so I assumed it was you, maybe calling from the radio station or something. And it's like, oh, this lady, I heard about you. I have your card. I have your book. I want you to come speak at our center. It's not even open yet, but I want to book you. So, exciting things are happening with that book.
Oh, that is exciting.
It is. But in the same vein, I want to say in National Caregivers Month, your book, people aren't going to think it's a part of National Caregivers Month, but it totally is, because what's more important than taking care of your relationships, especially if you're a caregiver, which you know, right?
Well, that's really very true, because if you're not taking care of what's going on, like right in between you and your significant other or spouse,
right?
That's a problem, especially if, I know in the case with Joseph and me, we were both the primary caregivers for our mothers.
At the same time, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. We had moms in stereo. And that we used to say that. And I used to try and take care of my mom during the week and his mom on the weekend, and not the whole weekend. It was, Sundays was the day we were with his mom, but in the going that time before they were both settled, my mother in Damaris Grove, my mother-in-law in Brandywine Hall, we had to move them. His mother moved 3 times. Yeah. My mother moved from her house at 50-some years.
Yep.
It was a lot. And Cathy, if you're not paying attention to your relationship, that kind of thing can really have a negative impact on what goes on between you and your sweetie.
And as someone who's had the fortunate opportunity to take a peek inside of your book, I can assure your listeners that this is, even National Caregivers Month can be a place to look at the 5-year marriage. Trust me, it has so many more applications than people could even begin to imagine.
Cathy, you're so good. Thank you for bringing up the 5-year marriage. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Listen, last night, I live right outside of town, and I didn't even hear it, but there was a big fire at Barclay Friends, and it's just a couple blocks from the station. It's a senior living community, and Cathy, a fire can happen anywhere. And right now, I don't think they know what caused the one last night. But when we're in a public place, any place, we sort of presume everyone is following the safety rules. Right. And when my mother-in-law was in Brandywine Hall, I never thought twice about asking about any of that stuff. Our biggest concern was that she was being well taken care of, and the crew at Brandywine Hall took really good care of my mother-in-law. But what if we have a parent in a senior living place or a nursing home, or what do we have to look for to make sure that our parent's safe?
Well, I have to be honest with you. As many times as I've done this with as many family members, and I've done it dozens of times, I have not looked at the picture so big that I've said, well, what are your fire code compliances here? Because isn't it enough that I'm worrying about in my personal little world with my mom or mother-in-law or my loved one, that they are personally safe? Like, are your people going to take care of them? Are your people watching if they fall or if they don't eat or if they're choking or if they're, And so you get so wrapped up in that small microcosm of taking care of and protecting your loved one that honestly you don't think about the big picture. And, of course, we should, but how much can we as caregivers put on our plate, But what I will say is, and I haven't looked at this myself for that particular reason, but I will say that Medicare.gov has, as a part of their website, a rating system for nursing homes. And the rating system is really pretty good, and it's based on a questionnaire type thing that they put out every year. And, the nursing homes have to comply with that. And so it would be helpful for sure to look at the very least, the rating of the place that you're looking at, and then talk to those places and say, why is your rating, 4.3, or why is your rating only 3.7? What is it? It says right here that you're not complying in this place, or you don't do a good job in this kind of a thing. That's certainly a place you could go for sort of neutral information and then pursue the bigger picture. But truthfully, as a caregiver, Annmarie, it seems hard, right, to add now I'm going to check your fire codes to my plate.
Well,
when I'm so
right.
worried about the personal safety of my loved one.
Yeah, and you're right, because when the hurricanes were happening in the last couple of months, I was thinking, oh, that would be awful if that was my mom, and there was the hurricane was coming, and that you saw some of those seniors in wheelchairs in flooded areas, and you think, well, but that's like an act of God. You can't. That's something you just really have no control over, and so is a fire. But at least you think in a fire, they're doing things to prevent it from getting bad, or you just think that there's something there.
Well, and now who isn't going to ask? Every one of us is going to ask now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Now that it's hit so close to home, we're going to say, tell me how you comply with fire codes here, because this thing in Westchester has quite frankly scared me, and so I need to know that.
Yeah.
And maybe the bottom line here is, don't you ever be afraid to ask a question of a place where you have a loved one. That is your right and your obligation, and do not be afraid.
I have to say, Cathy, when my mother-in-law moved into Brandywine Hall, and she'd been in her house to an apartment to assisted living, and then we had to make a decision where she was to move from assisted living. And when we went over and talked to Brandywine Hall, they were so good about answering every single question. And, nursing home's a nursing home, and it's not where you want your loved one to be, or it's not where you want to be. But it would be even worse if they were cagey about something, or not telling, or giving you the feeling like they didn't want to answer a question or something.
And, of course, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, but Brandywine Hall they answered every question. Even if we didn't like the answer, they answered the questions.
Well, there you go.
And I think that's really important.
Agreed.
But you know what, Cathy? I was thinking about this. I thought, so many of those people now don't have a place to live, and they may have to move back with their kids.
Maybe.
And the kids are working, so maybe they need to hire a home health care aide.
Yeah.
And so I've heard so many stories. But I have the stories. You have the experience. Let me ask you this. What are some of the things we need to know about hiring a home health care aide?
Well,
and you did that for your brother-in-law, right?
Yes, I did. But that is a place where you're going to ask if they've done background checks, if that's part of their, when you hire home health aides, you want to know that the service that you're hiring has done background checks on these people, what their experience is, what is their training, what do they do to make sure that they, know that your person is going to be safe. That is a standard, they have to have training programs for those people. And as a part of their deal, they always do background checks. So if they don't hire them. That's as simple as that. Do not hire someone who does not do that. But these agencies are bonded. That's the other thing. Are you bonded? So if they steal from your loved one, you're protected. That kind of a thing.
Huh. So is that how that happens when they're bonded? Is that what that means? It's like an insurance?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Do you have liability insurance? So if this person falls in my mother's house, you're not going to try to sue my mother for her homeowner's insurance, for something that happened here while they're an employee of yours.
Interesting. I don't think I've been bonded, but I don't think I ever quite knew what that meant.
Yes.
And then what do you do about some of those? You've read the stories, I'm sure. You've probably dealt with people who've had this happen, where there's unscrupulous people, and they get the trust of the person they're caregiving for, and then they get them to sign over their house, the deed to their house, or they give them their checkbook, and then they get robbed blind. How do you stop that?
Well, truthfully, that rarely happens when you're hiring a reputable agency. That happens when you hire someone, my cousin's sister, who's taking care of other people, and you can get her for $12 an hour instead of the $25 or $20 an hour you're going to pay an agency. And it's usually because it becomes a cost-saving device, you know what I mean? And I understand it's very expensive to hire home health aides, right? But it's when you're hiring someone who probably you don't have the protections of a reputable agency that you're going to run into those people who, start wheedling their way into your loved one's checkbook and jewelry. And, things like that. Or in the alternative, quite honestly, Annmarie, sometimes it's the other relative, you know. Sometimes there's a cousin or who comes out of the woodwork and says, don't worry, I'll take care of Aunt Mildred. And 6 months later, Aunt Mildred doesn't have any money and doesn't own her house anymore. So, I mean, the only way to protect against that is to have checks and balances amongst the people who are helping.
And you know what, Cathy, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, you and I, but I think I've mentioned it to my listeners that one of the things with my mom moving out of her house was because I have an unscrupulous sibling. And when, well, first he committed fraud with the credit cards. And my mother did not believe that she could lose her house. On the day that I caught it, there was $23,000. My mother was $23,000 in debt. In debt on credit cards that my brother opened up in her name.
Oh, heavens, Annmarie.
And my mother didn't know that, and I kept saying, Mom, you could lose your house. And she said, no. And she said something to my brother, and he said, no, that's not even possible. And then my mother used to go to a senior center, and they had somebody from the senior care place come in and talk to their group.
Right.
And she found out that it could happen, and then she paid attention a little differently. She just figured I was complaining about my brother.
Well, and that is a conversation I just had this week with somebody. They said, what do you do when, a cousin, we have a bunch of cousins and it's maiden aunts or whatever, and one of them has come in. And I said, honestly, you have to get someone else to come in. You have to get an attorney or, someone that they believe is from the area agency on adult services or something like that, because they're going to believe that person before they're going to believe you. They don't believe you. You're a little kid in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
You're still having spats with your cousins or your sister or your brother or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to have the, quote, expert come in, and all of a sudden they're more willing to believe and understand. That's true.
Yeah, it was when my mother heard it from an outside person and they had a big conversation about it. Then she said, oh, this actually is possible. Mm-hmm. So it happens, and I know it, and I've talked to other attorneys at the time I was going through this. It happens a lot.
It does. I'm sad to tell you that it does.
Yeah.
And you can do so much, and you can keep trying to, protect your loved ones and their money so that they have money to pay for their care, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, Cathy, we need to take a little break, but when we come back, I want to have the Medicare conversation with you.
Fantastic.
So everybody stay close. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm here with Cathy Sikorski. And, Cathy, I want to talk a little bit about Medicare.
Sure.
Because this time of the year is open enrollment.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with you, Cathy, I'll be so glad when it's over because practically every commercial on TV is about this open enrollment stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember this time being with my mom this time of the year, and I would go over and she'd hand me these big books from the government.
Right. Yeah.
And then she'd ask me what to do. And first of all, I was so busy taking care of all the other stuff that I just wasn't going to sit down and read everything. So I had no clue, and I was really lucky she had really good insurance.
Yeah.
But what do we need to look at? Like if my mother gave me those books today, what should I be looking at?
So those books will drive you insane. They really will. Before I even tell you that, I want to tell you that in Pennsylvania, everywhere in Pennsylvania, every county has a free service called Apprise, APPRISE, and it's usually through the area agency on aging or adult services and aging. It's called AAA in most of our counties, and it's free. And their only job is to talk to you about Medicare and how to make choices for you. And these people are trained, and they can help you with, well, I take this medication and that medication is, which plan is best for me, or I have these medical issues. They're really, it's a wonderful, wonderful service for Pennsylvanians. So if you're struggling with this and you're overwhelmed by it, and if you're not an expert, you are struggling with this and overwhelmed by it, please go talk to these people. You can even type in a prize in Pennsylvania, prize in Chester County, prize in, Berks County, and it will come up and tell you how to contact these people. It is a wonderful free service. Now,
so if I typed in a prize in Chester County, it would tell me who in Chester County, who specializes in Chester County?
It's your area, aging and adult services.
Oh, okay.
Who has that? But I was at a place called Surrey Services. In Devon, and they have people from a prize from Delaware County and Chester County come to their facility, and you can make appointments with them.
Yes,
so
sir.
There's an example of where it's even outside the box. If you belong to a senior center, a prize people might come there. It's not just that one agency. They go out into the community. And so there's plenty of senior service places where there's senior citizen meetings, senior circles, things like that, where a prize is probably available. So I just can't highly recommend that enough.
I remember the Surrey Services. I remember that they were really good with my girlfriend's parents, who just both of them passed away earlier this year, but they used to use the Surrey Services.
Surrey was amazing. I got to speak there the beginning of this month for National Caregivers Month. God, it seems so long ago. And I think they said it's $35 to join there for the whole year. And it's a beautiful facility. They have meals, they have talks, they have entertainment. Honestly, it's just wonderful. And it's in Devon, right near the Devon Horse Show.
Oh, okay.
So now, what you should look for is, it's funny, you had asked me when we were chatting about Plan F as in Frank.
Oh, yeah. I had to laugh because it was one of Joseph, a couple of Joseph's clients. He has a portion of his clientele are older, and they've been talking about Plans F and G. Now, that sort of sounds like something dirty, but it isn't.
Plan F, and it's been about 2 years now since I've had to do this for somebody personally, but I'm pretty sure this is still true. Plan F is the best plan you can get. I am 90% sure about that. But again, ask a prize. The only thing, and let me just tell you, Plan F at Humana and Plan F at AARP and Plan F at United Healthcare and Plan F at, all Plan Fs are the same, okay? All Plan A, B, C, D, E, all Fs are the same. The only difference that there might be is always the cost. Okay. So, if you're going to pay less for a Plan F, you might want to choose that. And it may or may not include drugs, which you can't get these Plan Fs confused with Medicare Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D. That's something completely different. Now, how confused are we, right?
Well, are those I've been listening. There's other plans, and then there's Advantage things. So I hear like the different companies will say you can get this Medicare Advantage.
Yes.
And that's different from Plans F and G?
It is. Medicare Advantage is a HMO type plan, and it takes over all of your Medicare, maybe your drugs, maybe not, and it's basically a Medicare Part C plan. So Medicare Part A is your hospitalizations. Medicare Part B is your doctors. Medicare Part C is a Medicare Advantage or HMO plan, and Medicare Part D is for drugs. Okay? That's a very simplified explanation. But none of those are the DEFG plans that we're talking about. They're all what we call Medigap programs, which fill in all the gaps that Medicare doesn't pay. So you buy a Medicare program, and then you might buy a Medigap program to help pay for the things that Medicare doesn't pay. All right?
So wait a second, Cathy. So Medicare is the government, and that's
correct.
And then that's A and B.
Correct. And D, maybe. No, it's A and B. For ease, it's A and B. That's the government program, A and B.
Okay. And then C and D are something extra you get?
C you don't get A and B. You take C instead, and you pay for it all yourself.
Oh.
And that's a Medicare Advantage program, which is typically what we think of as an HMO program. And they tell you what doctors you can go to, and you can't go out of your network, and, things like that. And usually that costs a little bit more, but you don't pay as much in co-pays and deductibles.
So I'm guessing, in knowing Joseph's clientele, these other FNG plans are more expensive.
Well, what they're doing is those people are taking Medicare Part A and B. They're paying that little $104 a month to the government right out of their Social Security check, and then they're buying a Part F on top of that, which pays all their deductibles, all their excess 20%, and probably includes a drug program, so it also pays for most of their drugs.
Kathy, how do people figure this stuff out?
It's really complicated.
You have to call a prize.
You really do. You have to call a prize, and they can even plug in all your drugs into the Medicare.gov website or some of these, like Humana or whoever you're thinking about buying, and you'll say, these are the 10 drugs that I take. What will it cost me if I take your plan? And they will tell you how much you will actually pay for those drugs during your term with that plan. Now, here's something I really want to tell you that's important. Open enrollment is a bit deceiving. If you are on Medicare Part A and B, you have the government program, and you're choosing a Medigap carrier, which is that F or G or whatever, you can change every year. If you are on a Medicare Advantage program or Medicare Part C, if you try to change carriers, they can subject you to underwriting, which means they're going to look at your pre-existing conditions, and you may not be able to get a good plan. So you need to choose wisely and think long and hard about whether or not a Medicare Part C or Advantage program is for you, because you're probably going to be in it for the long haul if you have serious health problems.
So if you're new on Medicare, are you better off going in one of those Medigap programs while you're still healthy? Like, let's say you turn 65 and you're still healthy.
Right. You can change your mind and pick the cheapest one every year, You can keep changing your mind and picking cheaper plans if you want to.
Now, you're saying every year. Is this open enrollment thing?
It's every year.
But is that the only time you can change?
Yes. Unless you have, there's never an easy answer. This is how complicated it is.
Yeah.
Unless you have a life-changing event, and there's a definition of what that means, which a prize will tell you, because honestly, it's too complicated here.
So, and then you said there's something new happening with Medicare this year.
Well, everybody's getting a new number. It's called your MBI. Medicare Beneficiary Identifier, and it is not your Social Security number. So now that you know your Social Security number and you know it forever, you can't use it anymore as your Medicare number because you won't know what it is.
I think that's wonderful. I used to see my mother take out her Medicare card when she went to the doctor, and it had her Social Security. I was already aware of this because that's what my brother was using, and then I thought, if my brother is going to be that unscrupulous, everybody could be that unscrupulous.
Well, sure.
It's on all these databases.
Yes, but the problem is, of course, Annmarie, that it's on all these databases already. They're not going to erase that. It's just going to be new now. So for part of me, I think, well, that ship has sailed, and now you're just going to confuse old people again because they're not going to know their number, and you're going to send them into a tizzy. But I get that they're trying to, as my grandmother used to say, close the barn door after the horse got out.
Yeah, I just never understood it. My mother will be gone 8 years in February, and it was 8 years ago that I was saying that. It's like, how is it that your Medicare number is your Social Security?
Right.
And, my mother would just roll her eyes and say, I don't know, you figure it out.
Right.
But I thought that was irresponsible to do.
It is. And hopefully this will be a good thing, and it will stop that kind of craziness. But it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's changing. So just so people are aware, when the reason I like to tell people this, especially the older generation, is when you get this mail that says this is your new card, so, it's funny. My mom won't throw away anything, but that's the envelope she'd throw away because she would think it was junk mail. So be aware that this is not junk mail. This is true, and you are all getting new numbers, and they're not going to be your Social Security number. So be on the lookout for it and know that that's correct. Things are changing.
Okay, so it's Friday. It's happy hour. Let's talk about mooning.
Oh, my God, mooning is my favorite thing because every time you and I talk, something comes up that has some naughty connotation.
I know.
And here it is, mooning. Medicare is now going to moon you when you go to the hospital or the emergency room. And, of course, with hospital gowns and such, we think we know what that means, don't we?
Yeah.
This is a whole different kind of mooning.
I know. It's probably not as much fun, huh?
It isn't, and you won't forget it because that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So there's this thing in Medicare that if you go to the hospital for 3 nights and then you have to go to a nursing home for rehabilitation, they will pay for that nursing home for 100 days. And that's wonderful. But you must be admitted to the hospital. And now hospitals are playing this fun little game where they keep you under observation and they don't admit you. And they don't tell you.
Oh.
And then you go to a nursing home for, say, 2 or 3 weeks or a month to get rehabilitation because you had knee surgery or hip surgery. And then you have a $10,000 nursing home bill because Medicare won't pay it because you were never admitted to the hospital and nobody told you.
So why are they doing that?
Well, they've been doing it for years. So now the moon form is they must tell you that you are under observation. And they must do it within the first 36 hours so that you know. Now, the good news is you'll know it. The bad news is they're still going to try and not admit you so that they don't have to put you in a pay status where you would eventually be able to go to a nursing home where Medicare would pay for it. So we, elder attorneys, are advising our clients to make sure you speak to the physician in charge if you are not getting any results and you feel like your loved one is going to be staying in the hospital because they are seriously ill, whatever that is, that you want them admitted as soon as possible. And if the physician in charge won't help you, then you talk to your family physician and you get them to call the hospital to help you and to be on your side. You can appeal this ultimately, but if you can fix it from the ground floor, I always say try that first.
Sure. But here's what I don't understand. If I'm going to go to the hospital for 3 days and they say it's under observation, so how can they say they didn't admit me if I'm staying there for 3 days?
Because observation status is just a status they can call it. They can just call it not admitted. It's just honestly, Annmarie, follow the money, you know?
Yeah. And so if they do that and then you have to go someplace for 2 weeks or something in rehab, then boy, that's really that sort of amazes me.
Yeah, it's been going on for years, and people have to hit with these bills, and you can appeal it, and sometimes appeals work. Often they do, but people, I wish you don't have to get to that point. I don't want you to have to be in the appeal status.
But how does that benefit the hospital if you're not admitted? I don't understand how that's a benefit to the hospital that they would do that.
My only response is from a practical standpoint than anything else is that if they are in somehow capitated to what they can spend, in dollars on Medicare patients or whatever, this is how they keep that cost down. The cost-saving measure.
Okay.
And I don't even know that to be true, but that's my educated guess.
Okay, so now I have to tell you, recently I was talking to somebody who told me this terrible story about retirement money. And her spouse retired, I think it might have been 10 years ago, and there was a 401k and a pension. And so and maybe it was even longer ago, that because the company took the 401k, the whole 401k, and invested it in Lucent. And we know what happened with them.
Yeah, they took a dive.
So almost overnight, their $1 million in retirement savings disappeared. And then last year, the company went back to back to them. It was her spouse's company, and and said they were only going to continue giving him a pension for another 10 years.
Wow.
Now, I've heard, I don't even know what company it was, but I've heard similar stories from other people, either about themselves or about their parents.
Yes.
So it's not just one company.
Yes.
Are they allowed to do that?
Yes. The answer to that, sadly, is yes. Nothing stops you from suing them, like suing them because they had a fiduciary duty to invest those 401ks wisely, but I can't believe a bunch of people didn't get together and, file a class action lawsuit against those people. But that costs money, That's time and money. That's number one. And number two, the pension distribution depends on what the pension documents say. So I can't speak to that because I don't know what kind of contract they signed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know if he had a union. I don't know where they are. I don't know what kind of contract the pension, how it was created. But the ugly answer to that is, yeah, it happens all the time. It happened to my husband's family when my husband was a little boy. These guys went on strike, and they wiped out. His dad had worked at Lee Tires for 30 years, and they wiped out their pensions. They just said, Lee Tires no longer exists. We're going to call it something else. And they reopened it as under another name, and all those benefits were gone.
So this isn't even anything new.
How about that?
Yeah. So how do we protect ourselves?
Okay, so this is the deal. When my husband, and I only know this from, practical experience, but my husband worked for, one of the Fortune 500 companies for quite some time, and they saw that there was a possibility. I have to give them credit. They saw that there was a possibility that these kind of investments could hurt people. And so what they did is, and I think many companies are doing this, is they are allowing you to move a percentage of your 401k into your own, quote, 401k type thing. So in other words, they're not in control of the investment, so you can move it. So if Fidelity was in charge, you could say, Fidelity, take 30% of this, and I want you to do other things with it. And so you weren't just subject to whatever the person at the company was doing. And that has been very, very beneficial to a lot of people. So the bottom line here is you need to be educated about your money even at work. You need to ask them what they're doing, and you need to find out if there's ways for you to have more control over it. You can't always, but sometimes you can, and people don't take advantage of that.
And if you so whether it's going up or down, and then if you can move, if you can take 70% of that and put it in something that you think is a little safer, you're happier that way.
Right, exactly. So you have to ask the questions. Again, here we are back at asking questions about things that are important in your life. Is there a way for me to have any control over this? Is there a way for me to be the person who, chooses, at least takes it out of, like if you buy 100% stock in our company, can I take some of that and put it in a mutual fund within the same 401k? Because I know that there are plans like that where you can do that.
Well, that's good. I guess it's good if you have a financial advisor who can
and that's
help you do that.
The rest of it. You have to, at our age especially, and when you get into your 40s and 50s, you need to have a financial advisor. You need to have someone who works in this looking at your finances from every aspect, and that includes your work finances.
Okay, Cathy, we're almost at the end of time, but I have one last question to ask you. When you were in Chicago, your sweetie John went to a seminar on men as caregivers.
Yes.
And you wrote to me and said he came away with some interesting insights. What did he learn?
He did. Number one, 40% of caregivers are men. Doesn't that surprise you?
Yeah, it does.
But mostly for their spouses. Almost rarely not anything but spouses. So the good news is they'll take care of us. The bad news is they won't take care of their mother. We have to.
Yeah. I have to say, Joseph was really good because he did take care of his mom.
But
yeah, he was the exception.
He was. They have a very hard time being comforters because they're fixers, And so they have to step out and learn how to be comforters and not fixers all the time. That was something he definitely walked away with. And finally, the hardest thing the thing they have most trouble with is asking for help. And they have to be told that it's okay to ask for help.
Well, that's interesting, Cathy. Those are three good tips. And you guys you need to get that comforter thing. We like that comforter thing. We comfort you. If we need to be comforted, you need to learn how to do that.
Yes. not that hard, guys.
Yeah, really.
Trust me, you don't have to fix everything. Sometimes you can just say, oh, I'm sorry you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Here's a cup of tea.
Kathy, I have even more questions to ask you, but we're out of time. So we're going to have to do this again another time. And tell my listeners how they can, thanks for coming to Happy Hour, but tell my listeners how they can get a copy of Who Moved My Teeth.
Who Moved My Teeth on Amazon.com. Who Moved My Teeth. You can type that in, or Cathy Sikorski, and that's Cathy with a C, Cathy Sikorski.
And, of course, I put the link to that Amazon page on the radio wrap-up today at victoriouswoman.com.
Thanks.
Kathy, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend and a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Annmarie. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And so, Victory Chicks and you guys, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? I'm going to my cousin's house. They always have a full house, and their kids and grandkids, and I think my other cousin will be there too. So it's a good day for me. I really enjoy being in the center of all that love and good energy. I hope whatever you're doing, it's a good day for you too. And here's a quote from Tony Robbins. A little something to keep in mind as you're running around and dealing with all the craziness of the holiday, maybe the craziness of your family. And it's from Tony Robbins, who suggests that you, here's the quote, trade your expectations for appreciation, and your whole life changes in an instant. And I really can see how that is possible, that can happen. In this time of Thanksgiving, I want you to know that I am so grateful that you join me each week. It makes me happy to talk with you, to bring you guests with a little something different or a little information that you didn't know before. And hopefully people who help you to make your life better. You know, give it that extra sparkle. Thank you for being here. And happy Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you next time. Jen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.